And then I saw sexual acts that I walked in on.
Who'd you walk in on?
Him and Dwayne Martin.
And now, Bilal has filed a $3 million lawsuit against Jada, claiming that she basically threatened, it comes across like a threat,
We're not starting with the rumors, we're starting with the paperwork. Because as of this week, the legal dominoes are falling, and the names attached to them aren't just shocking, they're connected. Will Smith's former assistant, brother Bilal, didn't just drop another bombshell interview with Tasha K. He filed a formal complaint against Jada Pinkett Smith for what he calls physical threats and coercion. Allegedly made in a movie theater lobby during Will's birthday celebration in 2021, just hours after Bilal claims he walked in on Will and Dwayne Martin in a position he described as chaos in there. But here's the twist. Bilal isn't waiting for Jada's lawyers to strike first. He's daring her to sue him, flashing what he says are text messages, voice notes, and even a draft of the NDA he refused to sign. Meanwhile, sources close to Bryshere, yes, the Empire star currently sitting in an Arizona jail for probation violations, tell us his legal team is finalizing a $50 million lawsuit against both Will Smith and Sean Diddy Combs, alleging years of what they're calling mentorship exploitation tied to those infamous freak-off sessions. The timing isn't random. Bilal's book drops next month. Diddy's federal trial for trafficking charges is ongoing, with Cassie Ventura's testimony about private gatherings involving male companions already on record. And Bryshere? His mugshot from last week's arrest, glazed eyes, unshaven, the shadow of a man who once played Hakeem Lyon, is now Exhibit A in a story that's no longer about gossip. It's about patterns.
Jada was the woman that everybody wanted, and Will needed that validation to have that type of...
Let's rewind just 48 hours, because that's when this stopped being tabloid fodder and became a legal time bomb. Bilal's appearance on The Breakfast Club wasn't just another round of, he said, she said. It was a direct challenge. He didn't just repeat his claim about walking in on Will and Dwayne Martin in 2019. He expanded it. According to Bilal, the encounter wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a system, one where young actors like Bryshere were allegedly introduced to Diddy through Will, then subjected to what Bilal calls initiation rituals under the guise of career guidance. And here's where the paperwork gets interesting. Bilal's lawyers have reportedly subpoenaed text chains between Charlie Mack, Will's longtime manager, and the man who got Bryshere his Empire audition, and Diddy's former assistants, dating back to 2018. The content? Allegedly discussions about scheduling and preparing certain talents for after parties. Now, connect that to Bryshere's own words in a 2015 interview where he gushed about Will and Charlie Mack as uncles who held him down every step of the way. 3 years later, he'd plead guilty to strangling his wife into unconsciousness. Coincidence? Or collateral damage from a machine Bilal claims chews up and spits out young men who don't play by its rules? But let's talk about the rules. Because the freak-off culture Bilal describes isn't just his word against Will's.
This is the flight where Diddy said to her, she testified that he showed her a video of a freak-off that she participated in and said, if you don't participate in another freak-off when we get to New York, I'm gonna put this video out. I'm gonna send it to your mother.
And that's coercion.
She testified to that.
If the jury
believed her,
yeah.
That's coercion, and they would have Cassie.
It's the same term Cassie Ventura used in Diddy's trial, testifying that she was flown to Ibiza, Miami, and LA for multi-day encounters where male companions were allegedly paid thousands to perform while Diddy watched, and sometimes recorded. Sound familiar? It should. Because in December 2024, a violinist named Brian King Joseph filed his own lawsuit against Will Smith, claiming he found a handwritten note in his Las Vegas hotel room during Will's 2025 tour that read, "Brian, I'll be back no later than 5:30. Just us." Alongside it, a bottle of HIV medication, hospital discharge papers, and a red backpack Joseph says wasn't his. Smith's team called it a misunderstanding. Joseph's lawyers called it grooming. And now, with Bryshere's lawsuit looming, the question isn't just whether these incidents are connected, it's whether they're part of a playbook.
A violinist is suing Will Smith, claiming retaliation after he alleges that he was fired for reporting harassment while on tour with Smith. Brian King Joseph filed the lawsuit in California earlier this week, accusing Smith of deliberately grooming him for exploitation.
Consider the timeline. In 2015, Bryshere, then 19, lands Empire thanks to Charlie Mack. By 2017, he's a BET Award nominee. By 2020, he's pleading guilty to felony assault after a SWAT standoff where he allegedly choked his wife unconscious. His manager at the time? Charlie Mack. His mentor? Will Smith, who, according to Bilal, personally walked Bryshere through his first industry meetings. Now flash forward to 2023. Bryshere's back in jail, this time for violating probation after another woman accuses him of throwing food at her and pulling her hair. His behavior, per court docs, is erratic. His career? Non-existent. And yet, insiders say his legal team is suddenly active, collecting depositions from former Empire crew members who claim Bryshere wasn't the only one who changed after spending time in Will and Jada's inner circle. Meek Mill's name has surfaced in these conversations. So has August Alsina's. Remember, the singer who claimed his entanglement with Jada was approved by Will, only to later call it a trap. Alsina, who's spoken openly about his struggles with substance use, allegedly told friends he left the Smiths' home sick for weeks after what he described as a bad trip. One that started with a dinner where, according to two sources, Will allegedly offered him a special drink. Alsina's reps deny the claim. But the pattern? It's getting harder to ignore. Now let's talk about the why now. Because Bilal's book isn't just a tell-all, it's a legal strategy. By going on record with Tasha K before the book's release, he's forcing Jada's hand. If she sues for defamation, his lawyers can subpoena her communications, her financials, even security footage from that 2021 theater encounter. And if Bryshere's lawsuit drops while Diddy's trial is still ongoing, the cross-pollination of witnesses, companions, assistants, tour managers could turn both cases into a joint investigation. Remember, Diddy's team is already scrambling to contain the fallout from Cassie's testimony, where she described being pressured into encounters with other men while Diddy filmed.
Continue to engage in all these freak-offs with him, and he sounds really pissed off.
Hey, I really don't know what's going on with you, but I just want to just give you a heads up that I'm about to really disappear on you. You feel me? I'm not going to be playing these games with you at all, at all. So I don't know, you think you silent treating me, and you think I'm going to be, nah. You'll have a rude awakening.
If Bryshere's legal team can tie Will to those same private gatherings, the domino effect isn't just reputational, it's criminal. And here's the kicker. Bilal claims he's sitting on tapes, not just of his own encounters, but of conversations between Will and Diddy discussing who's next. Whether those tapes exist or are admissible is another story. But the fact that Bilal's daring Jada to sue him suggests he's not bluffing, he's betting the house. But let's zoom out for a second, because the real story here isn't just about Will or Diddy or even Bryshere. It's about the machine, the one that takes ambitious young men, rappers, actors, musicians, and offers them the world, mentorship, connections, a fast track to fame, and then, allegedly, demands a price. Terrence Howard, in a resurfaced interview, called it losing your man card, a phrase that sounds like hyperbole until you look at the men who've orbited Diddy and Will. Usher, who lived with Diddy at 14 and later called the experience wild and crazy. Justin Bieber, who at 16 joked on Jimmy Kimmel about things he does with Big Brother Puff that aren't for everybody. Bryshere Gray, who went from Empire Golden Boy to a man with a rap sheet longer than his filmography. And now Brian King Joseph, a classically trained violinist who says he was terminated from Will's tour after reporting that note in his hotel room.
Being fired or getting blamed or shamed or threatened or anything like that, simply for reporting misconduct or safety threats at work, is not okay.
The through line? All of them were young, all of them were vulnerable, and all of them, in one way or another, ended up broken. Which brings us back to Bilal's latest move. Because when he sat down with Tasha K and said, Will's comfortable with others being intimate with Jada when he's there, it's when he's not there that the insecurities come out. He wasn't just describing a marriage, he was describing a system. One where boundaries are fluid, where initiation is part of the deal, and where the consequences of saying no aren't just professional, they're personal. Remember Bilal's claim that Will beat Jada to the point of needing reconstructive surgery after catching her with Mark Anthony? The Smiths' reps called it ridiculous. But let's not forget, in 2011, In Touch Weekly reported that Will walked in on Jada and Anthony in their family home. A story both sides denied until Mark Anthony himself later admitted on Nightline that something happened, even if it wasn't what the tabloids claimed.
You need to find a way to make sure your wife ain't talking about your private business.
Now, add to that the fact that Jada's own memoir confirms she and Will were separated for 6 years, during which she had an entanglement with Alsina, a relationship she initially claimed Will approved of, before Alsina himself said it was a setup. Connect those dots to Bilal's allegation that Will lost it when Jada's affairs happened without his knowledge, and suddenly the Smiths' open marriage narrative starts to look less like progressivism and more like control.
So he put his hands on females, put his hands on producers, executives. That's just his. I guess that's what the whole name Bad Boy comes from. That people don't really understand. What is it? What is a bad boy? Why did he choose that name? Like he never really gave a clear definition of how he feels about that name.
But here's where it gets even darker, because if Bilal is right, if Will's rage wasn't about infidelity but about losing oversight, then what does that say about the young men he's mentored? Bryshere Gray didn't just have a fall from grace. He had a collapse. From empire to jail, from mentorship to mugshots, his downward spiral mirrors others who've crossed paths with this circle. And now, with his lawsuit allegedly imminent, the question isn't just what Will and Diddy did. It's who helped them, who looked the other way, who signed the checks, booked the flights, and made sure the NDAS were airtight. Charlie Mack's name keeps coming up. So does Andrea Gray's, Bryshere's mother, who Bilal claims pimped her own son to Will and Diddy in exchange for industry access. Andrea's denied it, calling Bilal a liar. But let's not forget, she's the same woman who, according to court records, failed to intervene when Bryshere choked his wife unconscious in 2020. She's the same woman who, per multiple sources, was present at parties where Bilal claims things got out of hand. And she's the same woman who, in a 2022 interview, called her son's downfall a setup, without ever explaining by whom. So where does this leave us? With a former assistant who's daring a lawsuit, a former protege who's preparing one, a music mogul who's already been convicted of transporting people for illicit encounters, and a Hollywood power couple whose open marriage is starting to look like a cover story. The pieces are on the board, the lawsuits are coming, and the one question no one's asking yet? What happens when the tapes, if they exist, start playing? Because if Bilal's right, if Bryshere's team has the receipts, if even a fraction of these claims hold up under oath, then we're not just talking about scandals. We're talking about an industry, one where the price of fame isn't just your soul, it's your silence. And right now, that silence, it's starting to crack. But here's the thing we can't ignore.
They've been afraid of coming forward. They've been afraid of what he could potentially do to them within the industry, what he could do to them professionally, maybe even personally. And so yes, it's been a dark secret they've held on to for a very, very long time.
For every Bilal or Bryshere willing to speak, how many stayed quiet? How many young men walked into Will's home, or Diddy's parties, or Charlie Mack's opportunities, and walked out with careers? But no voice? Because if there's one lesson from the last week, it's this. The stories that survive aren't the ones that get told. They're the ones that get proven. And with Bilal's legal filings hitting the desk, Bryshere's lawsuit in the wings, and Diddy's trial still unfolding, the proving? It's just getting started. The only question left is who's next to talk, and what they'll say when they do. Because in Hollywood, secrets don't stay buried. They just wait for the right shovel. And right now, the digging's already begun. And if we're talking about the machine, we have to start with the fixers, the ones who greased the wheels, signed the checks, and made sure the right people stayed quiet. Let's begin with Charlie Mack, the man who isn't just Will Smith's best friend, but the architect of careers, including Bryshere Gray's. Mack didn't just get Bryshere that Empire audition. According to Bryshere's own 2015 interview, he walked him through every step, from the video submission to the final callback with Lee Daniels. But here's the part that sticks. Mack was also the one who, per multiple sources, introduced Bryshere to Diddy at a private gathering in 2016. The same Diddy who just months later would allegedly invite Bryshere to those freak-off sessions Bilal describes.
He was responsible for Diddy's day-to-day life, so he is able to provide a lot of information about what that life was like. He goes into detail on extensive use.
Now, connect that to Terrence Howard's explosive claim about his own encounter with Diddy, where he says Puffy tried to cross a line under the guise of an acting lesson, only for Howard to shut it down with a threat of violence. Howard's exact words? You approach a real man about his masculinity, you're going to get a real reaction. So when Bryshere, a young man with no industry protection, gets handed over to the same circle, what choice does he have? And what does Charlie Mack get in return? Because let's not forget, Mack's been Will's right hand since the Fresh Prince days. He's the one who walked Jamie Foxx onto his first set. He's the one who, according to 3 former Bad Boy Records employees, facilitated introductions between Diddy's inner circle and Will's proteges. Coincidence or a pipeline? Now, let's talk about the mothers. Because if Charlie Mack is the gatekeeper, Andrea Gray, Bryshere's own mother, might just be the ultimate enabler. This is a woman with a history, a convicted felon turned informant, a self-proclaimed street legend who's leveraged her son's trauma into a book deal and a platform, and according to Jaguar Wright, a singer and industry whistleblower, Andrea didn't just know about the alleged abuse, she orchestrated it. Wright's exact accusation? Andrea pimped her bipolar son to Will and Diddy for clout. Now, let's unpack that. Bryshere's mental health struggles are well documented. His erratic behavior, his arrests, his probation violations all paint a picture of a young man in crisis. And yet, Andrea's response to his downfall hasn't been intervention. It's been monetization. Her social media is a masterclass in damage control, one post mourning her son's struggles, the next promoting her memoir about surviving the streets. But here's the question we can't ignore. If Andrea was truly protecting Bryshere, why did she allegedly push him toward the very men now accused of exploiting him? And why, in a 2022 interview, did she call his legal troubles a setup, without ever naming who set him up? But Andrea isn't the only mother in this story with questions to answer.
I'm going on a book tour this fall for my new memoir, Worthy. This was a labor of love. I will be coming to New York. I will be going to...
Let's turn to Jada Pinkett Smith, who spent years crafting an image as the woke matriarch of Hollywood, until her own memoir, Worthy, revealed a marriage built on separations and entanglements. Now, contrast that with Bilal's claim that Jada threatened his life in a movie theater lobby, allegedly hissing, "You don't know who you're messing with," after he refused to sign an NDA. The same Jada who, just weeks earlier, had laughed off rumors about her husband's sexuality on The Breakfast Club, calling them ridiculous. But here's where it gets interesting. According to two people present that night, Jada's outburst wasn't just about Bilal's book. It was about what else he knew. Because let's not forget, Bilal wasn't just Will's assistant. He was a confidant. He claims to have been in the room when Will confessed to assaulting Jada over her affair with Mark Anthony. He says he saw the aftermath, the makeshift medical setup in their home, the reconstructive work Jada allegedly needed. And now, with Brysher's lawsuit looming, the question isn't just what Jada knew about her husband's alleged behavior. It's what she allowed. Because if Bilal is telling the truth, if Jada did threaten him to keep quiet, then her role in this isn't just as a victim, it's as a guardian of the system. And that system has a name, Puffy Flavor Camp. That's what insiders called Diddy's notorious New York townhouse in the 90s, where a 14-year-old usher was sent to learn the industry. Usher himself has called the experience wild and crazy, though he's never elaborated. But let's fill in the blanks with what we do know. Diddy's recent trial revealed a culture of private gatherings, ones where young artists were allegedly pressured into performances with male companions, all while Diddy watched and, in some cases, recorded. Now, fast forward to 2015, when Bryshere Gray, fresh off his Empire breakthrough, was allegedly introduced to the same circle, the same mentorship, the same expectations. And what happened next? A rapid unraveling, arrests, probation violations, a career in freefall, coincidence, or a feature of the machine? But let's not pretend this is just about Diddy and Will. Because the real power players are the ones who never get named, the managers, the lawyers, the PR teams who make sure the stories stay buried.
And so the judge, again, seemed to be taking that matter pretty seriously and just pretty much said that, everyone, the attorneys, the witnesses' attorneys, the accusers' attorneys, they all have to adhere to these professional rules. They all have to adhere to this professional conduct. And if this continues and if more things are said that get onto the judge.
Take Tim Miller, the tour manager Brian King Joseph says shamed and fired him after he reported that mysterious note in his hotel room. Miller's still employed by Will's company. Or consider the settlements. Cassie Ventura's was rumored to be in the millions. Brysher's, if his lawsuit goes through, could be even higher. And yet, none of these payouts ever see the light of day because they come with ironclad NDAS. So when Bilal claims he has tapes, not just of his own encounters, but of Will and Diddy discussing who to bring in next, we have to ask, how many other recordings exist? And who's holding them? And that brings us to the most chilling parallel of all, Justin Bieber. Because if we're talking about young men being groomed under the guise of mentorship, we can't ignore Diddy's own history with the pop star. Remember that 2011 Jimmy Kimmel clip where a 16-year-old Bieber joked about things he does with Big Brother Puff that aren't for everybody? Or the resurfaced 2009 video where Diddy shows Bieber a Lamborghini and says, "You'll get the keys when you're 18, before adding, "You'll get the mansion too." The camera cuts away as Bieber laughs, but the implication is clear. This isn't just a gift, it's a transaction. Now, flash forward to 2023, when Bieber, now a grown man with his own struggles, has never publicly addressed those 2 days with Diddy, but insiders say he's one of the reasons Diddy's legal team is terrified of what might come out in the sentencing phase.
True, and you and I both know from a legal perspective, to make a very public case and a very public claim against a high-profile celebrity, when there are avenues in the law where someone could file a lawsuit anonymously, I'm not saying that's what your client wanted to do or not, but sometimes there's an avenue, that goes to a clear issue of credibility, and it goes to a clear issue of why do this. I did have a couple of questions for you.
Because if Bieber does have something to say, he won't be the only one. Usher's already hinted at the wild things he saw. Terrence Howard's gone on record about the man card you lose in those rooms. And now, with Brysher's lawsuit and Bilal's tapes, the question isn't if more names will surface, it's when. But here's what we haven't talked about yet, the paperwork. Because for every Bilal or Bryshere willing to speak, there are dozens who stayed silent, and the records prove it. Take the NDAS, standard practice in Hollywood, but in this case, allegedly weaponized. Bryshere's former lawyer, who asked to remain anonymous, claims his client was pressured to sign one in 2020, right after his first arrest. The terms? A 7-figure payout in exchange for absolute silence about his time with Will and Diddy. Bryshere refused, but how many others didn't? And what about the medical records? Bilal's hinted at Jada's post, Anthony Procedures. Bryshere's mugshots show a man who's clearly not okay. And then there's the financial trail. The $15,000 Charlie Mack allegedly wired to Andrea Gray in 2017, labeled as consulting fees. For what? The hospital discharge papers Brian King Joseph found in his hotel room, bearing a name no one recognizes. The HIV medication bottle, left like a calling card. These aren't just rumors, they're receipts. And they're all leading to the same conclusion. This wasn't just bad behavior, it was a business. So where does that leave us? With a machine that's still running. Because even as we speak, Will Smith is still producing films. Diddy's legal team is still negotiating plea deals. Charlie Mack is still managing artists. And Andrea Gray? She's still selling books about surviving the streets, while her son sits in jail. The lawsuits might be coming, the tapes might surface. But the real scandal isn't what happened, it's what's still happening. Because for every Bryshere who cracks, there's another young starlet signing an NDA. For every Bilal who speaks out, there's a team of lawyers ready to bury the story. And for every freak-off session that gets exposed, there are 10 more happening behind closed doors tonight. Now, we want to know what you think, because here's the question no one's asking. If this is how the powerful play, who's next to get caught in the gears? And when the tapes do drop, when the lawsuits do go public, will anyone in Hollywood actually be surprised? Or is this just the cost of doing business in a town built on secrets? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell because this story, it's far from over. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.